Hello, everybody. It's Friday. That means it's time for another topic of the week. My office, as you can see here, is in a little bit of disarray. I'm in the middle of some remodeling. Just got back from a long week of travel, but hey, no excuses. It's topic of the week time. So first off, normal preamble. Last week's topic of the week was the return of specialist games. Discussed it a lot on Warhammer Weekly, and there was a lot of great video responses, as well as good comments. Both new ideas and things people would like to see come back. And there were some really cool ideas. So one of the games that got mentioned that I had kind of forgotten about, but I think that would be an interesting specialist game, was Inquisitor, which was sort of a 40K line, and it was with 54 millimeter figs, which are obviously they were much bigger in scale than your normal 28 millimeter guys, which meant that it made them incompatible with the normal game, and I think people had a lot of problem with that. But as a model whore, as I proudly describe myself, who loves to paint all the time, 54 millimeter figs, which I have done some of just for either to use them as larger figs or just for fun, are really awesome to work with. Just that slight change in scale really is fun. So I think something like that would be really cool, especially if it was just sort of standalone and meant to work on its own sort of thing, be its own self-contained thing. A lot of people also gave shout-outs to doing, sort of corners of the old world, a way to keep the old world alive, which again I think is very possible, just like you had, the Horus Heresy box set being 10,000 years in the past. There's no reason why you couldn't do this. And a couple people mentioned, doing something like the Vermintide game, or having something very Skaven-focused. And, of course, I wholly support that. Anything related to the Ratmen is very good. They're not in their normal position, again, because of all this. I don't know if you can really see what that is, but we'll get to it later once it's all finished, and maybe you'll see that in an upcoming video. They're still there. You can see them. Nice Skaven are all just over there now. But at any rate, so lots of good comments, lots of good talking. So thank you very much to everybody who contributed. As always, all of those videos will be linked on the video down below. So if you want to watch all of those, go down there, you click last week's video, all the links are right there for you. Okay, with that out of the way, let's turn to this week's topic of the week. And the discussion of the specialist games got me thinking about how many of those specialist games involve some kind of additional narrative element. Campaign play. You think about something like Mordheim, where you actually name your warband, or your heroes have individual personality. Hell, maybe even your henchmen have individual names or personality. And it got me thinking about how a lot of these specialist games and a lot of these things can push into more narrative elements. And that got me thinking about the importance of narrative play. Now, obviously, Matiram has gotten out of, much of the wargaming, sort of video making and such, but he was really the leader of the charge and did a lot of really great stuff with narrative and narrative battle reports and narrative campaigns. And I've always liked campaigns in my war games as well. So, slight history lesson, role-playing games, as they were, grew out of a combination, if we're going to trace them back to Dungeons & Dragons, which I think is fair enough. So 1974, role-playing games grow out of two different things. One, they grow out of historical reenactments, so we'll kind of leave that to the side for a moment. But the other half of it, the Gary Gygax half of it, was it grew out of war games. He and his fellow collaborators and creators and players were all very serious war gamers. Historical war gamers, to be specific. And they sort of wanted to get deeper and started to push these things a little more fantasy and stuff like that. And so RPGs themselves were sort of this natural evolution that happened many years ago out of wanting more depth out of your wargaming, right? That was the sort of seed that grew RPGs. And so that got me thinking about how much is that still a force for, movement in wargames. And so I thought, what a fun topic of the week, hopefully this will be, to talk about how much do you like narrative elements in your war games. Does it matter to you? Not at all. That is to say, you don't care, you show up, you get 2,500 points, or whatever, or certain number of wounds or war scrolls, or I don't care what edition or type of game you're playing. Your army is just your army. It's a thing you put together. It's there. The opponent has an army. We're going to fight. We're going to have a punch up. There's going to be a winner. I don't need to know the personalities and things like that. That's probably one extreme end of the spectrum. At the other end is somebody who has very particular names and personalities and things like that for all of their heroes, and they want to play in like a very ongoing story. Honestly, very much like what Maturum had went through in his battle reports, right? His campaign arcs. So my question is, how much narrative do you like in your war games? And do you want to see Games Workshop have more offerings for deeper narrative for you to create and for you to experience? Because it's obvious to me that in Age of Sigmar, they are hewing closer to the narrative. That is to say, these books are being released along the time of an evolving narrative that's happening in the world. The characters and the war scrolls that we get are meant to portray the things we see in the story. The scenarios that are in those books are the recreation of the scenarios that happen in that story, and that's been going back to the end time, so this is definitely something that's been going on for a while. So it feels to me like the importance of the story is on the rise, and I want to know what you all think about that. Do you like it? Do you want to see sort of the releases and the crunchy aspects of the game be tied to the narrative aspect of the game, to an ongoing, evolving narrative? Do you want to be empowered to create your own narrative, your own campaigns? Do you want to see them release more stuff for having you not only be able to just sort of name your character and take them through a campaign, but for that to matter, right? That's what's the key. Consequences. You do well, then your heroes get a little better. You do worse, maybe they get a little worse, or they suffer, or your army suffers, or something like that, right? So, that's this week's topic. How important is the narrative to you? Do you want to see more of the narrative out of Games Workshop? And what do you think about the narrative directing the releases as it seems to be now in the Age of Sigmar? As always, I look forward to your responses. Thank you again very much, everybody. And as always, we'll see you next time.